She stood at the altar, heart racing, veil trembling, only to find the groom missing and a note in her hand that shattered her world. But before the silence could consume her, his older brother rose from the front row and said 5 words that would change everything. Then I will marry her. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The sun shone through the tall windows of the Billionaire hall, casting warm golden light on the marble floors. Soft music played in the background and the air smelled of roses and vanilla candles. Hundreds of guests filled the seats, dressed in fine suits and elegant gowns. Laughter and whispers floated through the space as waiters offered sparkling drinks on silver trays. In the center of it all stood Lyra Mendoza, dressed in a gown that shimmered like morning dew. Her hands clutched a bouquet of white roses, and her heart raced with a mix of nerves and excitement. She had always dreamed of this day. Growing up in a small neighborhood with a single mother who worked 2 jobs, Lyra had never imagined she would marry into one of the richest families in the city. Yet here she was, standing beneath the grand arch, ready to marry Corbin Hale. Corbin was the son of Silas Hale, a powerful businessman known for building an empire of tech companies. Corbin had charmed Lyra with sweet words, surprise flowers, and promises of a life filled with love and adventure. He had taken her hand and told her that her past didn't matter, that he loved her for her heart, not her history. She had believed him. The music shifted, signaling the start of the ceremony. Guests quieted, turning their eyes to the aisle. Lyra's friend June gave her a reassuring nod from the front row. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward, her footsteps soft against the polished floor. But something was wrong. When Lyra reached the altar, she found it empty. Corbin wasn't there. The musicians slowed, unsure of what to do. The room fell into a hush. Lyra looked around, confused. Her eyes scanned the rows of guests, hoping Corbin had simply been delayed. Maybe he was caught in traffic or fixing his tie. But then an usher approached her with a pale face and shaky hands. He slipped a folded piece of paper into her hand and quickly walked away. Lyra slowly unfolded the note. Her eyes scanned the short message, and her breath caught. "I'm sorry. I can't do this." The words were written in Corbin's handwriting, simple, cold, final. Lyra's fingers trembled. The note slipped from her hand and floated gently to the floor. The crowd gasped as whispers spread like wildfire. Cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled. Some guests stood up, others just stared. June rushed to Lyra's side, her face filled with worry and anger. She reached out and grabbed Lyra's hand, whispering, "We can leave. Right now." But Lyra stood still. She couldn't move. Her mind was spinning. Her heart was breaking in slow motion. The dream she had built, the life she had imagined, they were all crumbling before her. She thought of her mother who had sewn her veil by hand. She thought of the kids at the youth center she taught photography to, who had cheered when she showed them her engagement ring. She thought of all the sacrifices she had made to fit into this new world, to become the woman Corbin said he loved. And now, with one line on a piece of paper, it was all gone. A sudden voice cut through the noise. "There will still be a wedding today." Everyone turned to see a man standing from the front row. Tall, serious, dressed in a dark suit with quiet strength. It was Nico Hale, Corbin's older brother. He stepped forward with calm steps, his expression unreadable. "If my brother cannot keep his promise," Nico said, "I will." The room froze. Even the music had stopped. Lyra blinked in shock. She had barely spoken to Nico before. He was always quiet at family dinners, polite but distant. He rarely smiled. Some said he was colder than his father, more focused on work than people. "What are you doing?" Silas Hale barked from his seat. His voice was sharp with disbelief. But Nico ignored him. He looked only at Lyra. "You don't deserve to be left alone," he said. "Not like this. If you will let me, I'll take that vow." Lyra stared at him, unable to speak. Behind her, June's grip tightened on her hand. The crowd whispered louder now, some in confusion, some in awe. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Not yet. She had been thrown into the fire, but something in Nico's voice felt like shelter. She didn't know what this meant. She didn't know why he was doing this. But in a room full of people who only watched, only whispered, he had stepped forward. After a long, quiet moment, Lyra nodded once. And just like that, the ceremony began again. But this time, nothing felt the same. The music returned, softer and slower this time, as if unsure of itself. The guests sat in stunned silence, their eyes locked on the altar where something completely unexpected was unfolding. The groom, who had promised a fairy tale, had vanished. In his place now stood his older brother, Nico Hale, a man known more for business deals than grand gestures. Lyra Mendoza stood beside him, her fingers still cold from the shock of being left. The note still echoed in her head, its cruel message burned into her memory. Yet here she was, holding herself together in front of the crowd. Because somehow Nico had stepped in, not to save face, but to save her from falling apart alone. The officiant hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to continue. Then, seeing the quiet strength in Nico's expression and the calm resolve on Lyra's face, he opened the book in his hands and cleared his throat. "We are gathered here today," he began again, this time with a voice less certain but full of respect. As the ceremony moved forward, Lyra's thoughts drifted. She barely knew Nico. Their past exchanges had been short, small nods at dinner tables, polite greetings during family events. He had always seemed distant, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. He was calm, almost too calm, like someone who had learned long ago how to hide every feeling. But in this moment, when everyone else had frozen or stared, he had moved. Now he was standing beside her, his posture firm, his hand offered not in romance but in support. There were no rehearsed vows, no poetry. When the officiant asked Nico to speak, he simply turned to Lyra and began. "I can't promise a perfect life," he said quietly, "but I promise to respect you, to protect you, and to never leave you standing alone." The room held its breath. Those words, though simple, reached her in ways nothing else had that day. No promises of grand adventures. No declarations of forever love. Just honesty. When it was Lyra's turn, her voice shook, but she held on. "I don't know what tomorrow brings," she said, "but I promise to stay true to myself, and to walk forward one step at a time with open eyes." They exchanged rings in silence. The crowd, unsure how to react, slowly began to clap, some out of respect, others out of confusion, a few out of quiet admiration. The ceremony ended. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing every frame of this sudden twist in what was meant to be a perfect society wedding. Reporters whispered into phones. Headlines were already being written before the couple had even left the hall. As they walked down the aisle, Nico stayed close but kept a respectful distance. His arm wasn't wrapped around Lyra's waist. His smile wasn't forced. Instead, he simply looked at her with calm eyes as if to say, "I'm here. Just let me know what you need." Outside, the world was waiting. The press huddled near the steps, microphones and cameras ready. Security helped move them through the crowd and into a waiting car. Inside the car, silence settled like a blanket. Lyra stared out the window, her bouquet resting on her lap, untouched. She felt numb. "You don't have to say anything right now," Nico said gently beside her. "And you don't owe me anything." She turned to look at him. His voice wasn't cold, it wasn't warm either. It was honest. And that, more than anything, made her feel safe. "Why did you do it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nico looked out the window for a moment, as if searching for the right answer. "Because I know what it feels like to be abandoned," he said at last, "and because no one should have to face that in front of a crowd." The words struck something deep inside her. They arrived at the Hale estate just before sunset. The building was massive, walls of glass, tall ceilings, quiet halls filled with expensive art. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel like home. Nico led her through the house, stopping at a guest room. It was warm and softly lit, with a view of the city skyline. "This room is yours," he said, "and stay as long as you need. Nothing is expected." Lyra nodded, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," she said softly. "You're welcome," he replied. Then he left her alone. That night, Lyra sat by the window, still in her wedding dress. She looked out at the city, her thoughts spinning. Everything had changed in a single afternoon. She had walked toward a dream, only to watch it disappear. And now, in its place, stood something she didn't understand. A new path, uncertain and quiet. She didn't know who Nico really was, or what tomorrow would bring. But in the silence of that room, with the city lights glowing in the distance, she made a promise to herself. She would not let this day define her. And maybe, just maybe, this unexpected vow would become something more than a moment of rescue. Maybe it could become a beginning. Days passed quietly at the Hale estate. The grand house was still and cold, filled with soft footsteps and long silences. Lyra tried to adjust to her new reality, but everything felt strange. She still woke up thinking it had all been a dream, that she would go back to her tiny apartment, drink coffee from her chipped mug, and plan a life that belonged only to her. But each morning brought the same truth. She was now Mrs. Hale, not by choice but by circumstance. And her husband Nico remained a mystery. He left early for meetings, came home late, and spoke little. Yet small acts told her he cared. A warm blanket folded on the couch, a book left near her door, one she had once mentioned, fresh tea waiting in the kitchen, the kind her mother used to make. Despite his quiet nature, Nico made space for her. He didn't ask questions, didn't expect anything. And that, in some strange way, made her feel safe. Still, doubts grew in Lyra's mind. Whispers from the past lingered. Why had Corbin really left? What did the Hale family want from her? Had she truly been rescued or simply used? One night, unable to sleep, Lyra wandered the halls. She paused near the study and heard voices. The door was slightly open, the light dim. Inside, Nico stood, with his father, Silas Hale. They didn't notice her. "This marriage was never part of the plan," Silas said sharply. "Corbin was supposed to go through with it. It was a clean solution. Her image was perfect. Simple. Soft. People like that." Nico didn't speak at first. When he did, his voice was calm but cold. "You treated her like a product, like she was just a tool to fix Corbin's mess." "Because she was," Silas replied without shame. "The public needed a distraction from Corbin's scandals. She gave us that." Lyra's heart pounded. She stepped back into the shadows, her breath caught in her throat. She had been a distraction, a pawn in a powerful game. Everything Corbin had said, every promise had been fake. But then Nico's voice changed. "I didn't marry her for the company," he said. "I married her because she didn't deserve to be humiliated. I saw the way she stood there alone, and I knew I had to do something." "You made it worse," Silas snapped. "Now the media is watching every move. If she slips up, we all fall." Nico's answer came slowly. "Then let them fall. I won't let her be hurt again." Lyra backed away quietly, her eyes stinging. She returned to her room and sat in silence, the truth sinking in. She had been used at first, but somewhere along the way, something had changed. Still, the damage was done. The next morning, headlines spread across the city. News of her sudden wedding, her past, and endless rumors filled every screen. Some articles praised her strength. Others called her a social climber. A few were cruel. From bakery girl to billionaire bride. Was it all a plan? One headline read. Calls to her photography workshop began to drop. Sponsors pulled out. Old friends stopped replying. Strangers sent hateful messages. Her world, once simple and full of light, now felt heavy and dark. She tried to keep teaching the kids. They were the one part of her life that still felt real. She helped them learn about light and shadows, framing and focus, but inside, she felt blurry, lost between who she was and who the world thought she had become. One afternoon, while cleaning up after class, June called. You need to fight back, her best friend said. Don't let them tell your story. Tell it yourself. Lyra sighed. I don't even know what my story is anymore. Then start with the truth, June replied. That's more than most people have. Later that evening, Lyra found Nico in the garden. He was pulling weeds near the stone path, his sleeves rolled up, dirt on his hands. For the first time, he didn't look like the perfect businessman. He looked real. I heard you, she said quietly. The other night with your father. Nico didn't look surprised. He nodded once, still kneeling beside the soil. I'm sorry, he said. You didn't deserve any of this. Lyra sat down on the bench nearby. I was a distraction. That's what he said. At first, maybe, Nico admitted. But not to me. Not now. I see you, Lyra. Not the story. Not the scandal. Just you. She looked at him, searching his face for any sign of a lie. But all she saw was a man tired of silence, tired of hiding behind walls. Thank you for standing up for me, she whispered. Nico stood up, wiping his hands. I'll do it again, he said. As many times as it takes. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Not love, not yet, but respect. Truth. The start of something real. Lyra still didn't know what the future held. But now she had her voice, and slowly she was beginning to believe she could use it. The morning sun warmed the edge of the stone wall where Lyra sat, her fingers brushing the petals of a soft yellow flower. The garden was still new, patches of bare soil, uneven lines, a mix of wildflowers and herbs, but to her it felt perfect. It was hers, theirs, a place that didn't care about wealth, last names, or headlines. It had started with a single idea. One evening, Nico had asked, what would make this place feel more like home? She had smiled and said, a garden, something alive. The next morning, tools and soil bags were waiting on the porch. And so they began, not as a couple building a future, but as two people trying to create something beautiful from the ruins of what had once hurt them. Each day. They worked side by side. Lyra wore worn gloves and old sneakers, her hair tied back with a scarf. Nico, always so clean and composed, now had dirt under his nails and sweat on his brow. They dug holes, planted seeds, and laughed when things didn't go as planned. The garden didn't just grow, it healed. Outside their small world, the storm still raged. Reporters continued to chase headlines. Gossip still followed Lyra when she visited the youth center. A few sponsors returned, impressed by her honesty and resilience, but others stayed away. The whispers hadn't stopped. But Lyra had changed. She no longer tried to erase her past. She embraced it. Her photography exhibit, titled Still Standing, opened quietly at a local gallery. Each photo captured moments of quiet strength. An old woman holding her husband's hand, a child helping a friend tie a shoe, a single mother laughing as her son sprayed her with water. At the center of it all was one photo, a pair of hands covered in soil, planting a tiny seed in dark earth. Visitors paused at that one the longest. It told a story of starting again. At the opening night, Nico stood at the back of the room, his hands in his pockets. He didn't draw attention, he didn't speak, but Lyra saw him, and her smile, for once, wasn't guarded. After the exhibit, they returned to the estate. Nico led her through the garden, now lit by small lanterns. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, their petals soft against the night air. You made all this possible, Lyra said. Nico shook his head. You planted the first seed. They stood there in silence, the kind that felt safe and full. A few days later, a letter arrived. It was from Corbin. Lyra sat on the porch steps with the letter in her lap, unopened for hours. Finally, she tore it open. The words were careful, apologetic. Corbin spoke of pressure, fear, and shame. He blamed the family. He blamed himself. He asked for forgiveness. Lyra read it twice, then folded it back up and placed it in a drawer. She didn't reply. Instead, she poured her energy into her work. Her photography classes at the youth center grew. More children came, bringing with them stories, questions, and joy. Nico visited often, helping fix broken chairs, handing out snacks, or simply sitting at the back with a quiet smile. On one special Saturday, the children painted a mural across the center's outside wall. It showed a city of color and hope, with buildings, trees, stars, and in the center, a woman holding a camera. Lyra stood back, eyes wide with emotion, as one of the little girls whispered, "That's you." Later that night in the garden, Lyra handed Nico a small photo. It was the mural. "They see me now," she said. "Not as a bride, not as a scandal, just me." Nico looked at the picture, then at her. "They see you because you never gave up. You kept showing up even when it was hard." "So did you," she replied. In the soft glow of lantern light, Nico reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a speech. He simply opened it. Inside was a delicate silver ring with a tiny sunflower carved into its band. "This time," he said, "I ask not because of a mistake or to fix anything. I ask because I want a future with you, only if you want it too." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes, but she didn't look away. "Yes," she whispered. They placed the ring together beneath the sky. No guests, no cameras, just earth, light, and the sound of growing things. Weeks later, they held a small wedding in the garden. It was simple. The children from the center sat in folding chairs holding flowers. June read a poem. Lyra wore a dress she had sewn with her mother years ago. Nico wore the same shoes from their first ceremony, now stained with dirt. Their vows were short, spoken with soft smiles and steady voices, not promises of perfection but of trying, of listening, of never walking away. Afterward, the guests ate cake from a local bakery and danced barefoot in the grass. Lyra laughed until her cheeks hurt. Nico, once so quiet, twirled a child in the air and smiled in a way that lit up the whole yard. As the sun set, Lyra and Nico sat side by side on the garden bench. The flowers around them swayed gently, the air sweet and full of life. "We made this," Lyra said softly. "We did," Nico answered. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't look back. They looked forward, together.